require going beyond that to doing something to freeze or replace the Taiwan independence plank in the DPP Charter, as some DPP members have now proposed several times. But for that to happen, there would need to be a reliable, authoritative cross-strait dialogue, and Beijing would need to be willing to come to terms that Tsai could use to justify her taking such a politically important step. It may be that at this point, her political fortunes may be improving with Lai's appointment as premier. It's really too early to know, and it's certainly not well connected by any means to cross-strait relations. But her call on leaders on both sides to embrace harmony and moderation and seek a breakthrough in cross-strait relations, as she did a couple of days ago, certainly suggests she is trying to create a basis for movement if Beijing will reciprocate in an equally meaningful way. Whether the change in personnel staffing working on Taiwan-related issues in the mainland indicates similar positioning there remains to be seen. Many people predict the opposite, just as they thought that the 19th Party Congress would lead to a hard drive for unification and a real crackdown and so on and so forth, and a change in direction. Many now predict that the team that has been put in place or is in the process of being put in place in China, in the mainland, signals a tougher PRC stance. I personally think it's much too early to come to that kind of a conclusion. But again, dialogue will be key, and there could be risks for everyone going down that path. So we're just going to have to wait and see. So with that, thank you for listening.
Alan, that was tremendous. I've got 27 questions I'd like to ask you. But Larry told me that I could only ask 2. And we got 45 minutes for conversation here. But Alan, let me start out. I have to say that your talk was, what you laid out, would be more optimistic than I might be. But we'll take this on board. 2 questions. First, as you go through the Asia-Pacific region, there's a lot of doubts right now about America's staying power, and that is reflected in the economic domain as we've stepped back from TPP, a strategic disaster for us. And now we've got the TPP 11. You've got in the security domain over the last 5 years, China's in a much stronger military position in the South China Sea than they were. And so we've got allies and partners that are confused by what they receive on tweets from the White House on a daily basis. But fundamentals beneath that, economic and security, whether it was a President Trump or a President Clinton, some of the fundamentals are such that we find everyone in the Asia-Pacific region quite concerned. So the question is for Taiwan. As Taiwan looks at its security and its cross-strait relations, let's say that we have another several years of erosion of confidence in the region in the United States. What does that do? Is there debate in Taiwan about this, like there is in every other capital in the Asia-Pacific region among elites? And what would be the impact on their policy then regarding cross-strait, and what options might they have? You know, the Japanese are looking at options right now. The Australians are looking at options. What options might be available for Taiwan? Second question gets to Hong Kong, and you've got a lot of time, Alan, thinking about Hong Kong and being influential in U.S. policy towards Hong Kong. So with reversion, there was optimism that the framework that had been agreed upon with China and China and Hong Kong was such that democracy would remain vibrant in Hong Kong. Over the last 5 years, we've seen an erosion, a big erosion, and of concern. So as you've thought a lot about Hong Kong and a lot about Taiwan cross-strait relations, do do you look at Hong Kong as something that is compartmentalized, that's a China-Hong Kong issue, or does the PRC policies towards Hong Kong, in your mind, do they have implications for cross-strait relations, especially as Taiwan looks at Hong Kong? Or should Taiwan not look at Hong Kong and say that's a very separate issue and we shouldn't draw any implications from that?
Great question. Let me try the second one first, because in a certain way it's easier. That is, I don't think that one country, two systems ever had any appeal in Taiwan. And as the PRC messes up its management of the relationships with Hong Kong, the attitude is basic, although there's some people who are trying to help folks in Hong Kong, the basic attitude in Taiwan is, I told you so. Why would we ever want this? I have to tell you that shortly after Hong Kong reversion, a group of business leaders from Hong Kong came to Washington and were selling a story of what a wonderful arrangement this was going to be. It wasn't so much about democracy, but that was a sort of an element, but Hong Kong was going to just whiz along, right? And a lot of us said to them, and therefore Taiwan would really want this. And a lot of us said to them, you don't understand Taiwan. I think they didn't. I think maybe they have more sympathy today for what we were trying to say to them. I find it, well, there are two things. One is, to be very honest, I think the independence movement in Hong Kong is not helpful. But the democracy movement is something else again, and I don't think China had to make these decisions about the way they're handling this. And whether they're going to be irreversible or not irreversible, I don't know. But it's a shame that they're doing. And
it's a consequential shame.
It's consequential in Hong Kong. I don't believe it has much implication for Taiwan beyond what I said. Of course it is consequential within Hong Kong. I just am sort of amazed that anybody in the mainland thinks this does the mainland any good. So I don't know what more to say about that, Larry. It's just, it's so short-sighted and so on. Doubts about tweets coming out of the White House are perhaps not confined to our Asian partners. I think one thing that was really driven home early to the Tsai administration, now let's put this one on background, all right? Do that. The phone call.
Turn that off.
I think, yeah.
Just stop it.
Just keep in mind we've got 35 minutes, so just out of respect for everyone else's time, we can try to be concise. So,
thank you. Thank you, Alan, for your the great insight and analysis of the Taiwan cross-strait situation. And I have a question follow Ambassador Eikenberry's question. Is about the stepping back of the U.S. position from the TPP. Because we know that the economic vitality and the continued growth is very important for the security of Taiwan and to defend our democracy. But we are facing the very rapid integration of the regional the trade and economic integration. And Taiwan is it seems that Taiwan is going to be marginalized. And if our economy is stifled by this kind of marginalization, then it will be very dangerous for Taiwan in the future. So I don't know what's the U.S. policy regarding this issue.
Yeah, I should have specifically gone back on Carl's mention of TPP. Yeah, it's a tragic decision from my point of view. It will have all sorts of consequences, not just economic consequences, but political consequences in terms of American leadership, in terms of influence, and so on and so forth. And for Taiwan, one of the discussions I used to have with friends from Taiwan about making the necessary changes in regulation and law and so on was that the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for taking those hard decisions would be TPP. Although I had to say that I thought that in fact the PRC could probably block Taiwan, to be honest. Not with the United States, not with Japan, but they've got, as you're suggesting in your question, they've got a lot of economics, which translates into political clout, and so I wasn't really convinced that it was going to happen. But in any case, it was a perfectly worthy aspiration. And now, I suppose the TPP-11 has value, but it has a lot less value. We know that. My sense is, and to digress from your question for a moment, that the countries still in it are hoping that they can keep a seat warm to the United States for perhaps another administration. I don't know.
3 years and 3 months.
Sorry?
I said for 3 years and 3 months.
Well, but we also know, and I think that she may have gotten some education out of this, although Hillary Clinton played around also with her position on TPP to see what's happening. I think has got to have persuaded, she's not going to run again, but any Democrat who's going to run, you've got to find a way to get forward. I think that in a very fundamental sense, PRC economic strategists, put it that way, understand the importance to the PRC's own interest that Taiwan really not falter economically. But they have a hard time reconciling that with the policy of applying pressure. So what you get is this: we're cutting off senior level dialogue and interfering in formal economic agreements on the one hand, but we are also providing opportunities for people from Taiwan, at least on the mainland. I don't think that's going to work necessarily so well. We'll just, I am very strongly empathetic with what you're, sympathetic with what you're saying. I don't have an answer to it. So maybe 3 years and 3 months. But in any case, it is a big problem. I have to be honest in saying I hope that the new southbound policy is successful. I think it will be to some extent, but I don't think it can make up for both the things that are not happening necessarily with the mainland, but also the things that the PRC is blocking elsewhere. So I don't know how to better respond to your question. It's not a happy picture in that respect. I have to say also, however, having dealt with Taiwan for many decades, I have a lot of faith in the capabilities and the initiative and the creativity of people in Taiwan to find ways to do what's in their interest. So I'm not without hope on this at all. But it is hard.
Thank you.